Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Forbes senior contributor Adam Minsky. Adam, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
You and I have talked a lot in 2023, and it's really been a whirlwind year if you have student loan debt. Most notably, the Biden administration's sweeping student loan forgiveness plan has been struck down just a few months ago. So when you look back at this year, Adam, before we get into the conversation of what to look out for next, what stands out to you? How would you categorize this year?
There's been lots of high highs and low lows, I would say. Obviously some bad news for borrowers. That sweeping student loan forgiveness plan originally proposed by President Biden was, of course, struck down by the Supreme Court over the summer. We also had the end of the student loan pause and the return to repayment, which, after 3 years of no payments, now millions of student loan borrowers are having to pay again starting this fall. The transition back to repayment has not been smooth. There's been widespread problems and servicing issues that have really interfered with people's ability to pay their loans. So that hasn't been good. On the other hand, there's been approximately $132 billion in student loan forgiveness approved under other programs. There's a new affordable income-driven repayment plan called the SAVE plan that's providing another pathway to student loan relief. So it's not all bad news, and there has been some good that we've seen over the course of the last year.
Let's end the year on an optimistic tone. Let's talk about those high highs. As you said just now and in a recent piece for Forbes, you talked about the Biden administration approving billions of dollars in student loan forgiveness. What are some of the ways they have done this that stand out to you?
So some of the big ones are the IDR count adjustment and the limited PSLF waiver. These initiatives basically allow borrowers to receive retroactive credit toward either 10-year, 20, or 25-year student loan forgiveness under either income-driven plans or public service loan forgiveness. And for borrowers who receive enough credit to reach the threshold for forgiveness, they get a full discharge. And hundreds of thousands of borrowers have received discharge notices just in the last few months under these programs. Some of these are ongoing. There's also been sweeping relief provided under the Total Permanent Disability Discharge Program, which can provide loan relief for folks who are medically disabled. And there's been new pathways opened to student loan forgiveness for folks who have been harmed by their schools, including under the Borrower Defense to Repayment Program and the Closed School Discharge Program.
Adam, I always love having you on because A, you're a student loan expert, but B, you always give people tangible advice of an action plan, what they need to do next. This time is no different. And in a recent piece for Forbes, you outlined some dates that people really need to keep an eye on. They need to jot down their calendars. So viewers, if you are a student loan borrower, please open your calendars now. And Adam's going to go through some dates. Let's start with what borrowers need to do between now and December 31st, before the new year. What do people need to do between now and then?
Well, some big news from this week is that one of those deadlines, the December 31st deadline for folks who need to consolidate their loans in order to qualify for or benefit from the IDR count adjustment, just a couple of days ago, that December 31st deadline has now been extended to April 30th of next year. So that's good news for borrowers. You now have more time if you need to consolidate your loans to qualify or benefit from this one-time adjustment. You have another few months to do that. Definitely, folks also want to make sure what their status is. A lot of people have been put into administrative forbearance because of widespread loan servicing issues, and so some borrowers might want to check on their loan status, see if a payment is due. Next year, in addition to the April 30th deadline, we're expecting a lot more information and details on Biden's new student loan forgiveness plan, which he is trying to create to replace the one that was struck down by the Supreme Court. We expect to see final regulations on that possibly around May of next year. And then finally, on July 1st of next year, new regulations that will improve the new SAVE plan will also go into effect, and that might lower some people's payments under that plan as well.
Let's dive into these dates a little bit more deeply here. So you talked about the January date, January 2024, new student loan forgiveness rules take effect for consolidations. But now, do those rules take place in April?
More or less. What essentially is going to happen was there was a regulatory gap There was the December 31st cutoff for consolidations. And then if that ended on December 31st, there would have been a gap between January 1st and when these newer regulations go into effect later in 24. So what the extension of the deadline does is it allows borrowers to continue to benefit from the IDR account adjustment for another few months to basically close that gap between the end of the year and when these newer regulations go into effect next summer.
I do now want to fast forward to May, something that you said that Biden's going to have a new student loan forgiveness plan. This was really a banner item when he was campaigning for president. So when that was struck down, a lot of his supporters were really disappointed. So what is this new plan? You said it was a replacement, but how is it different? Because how will it be legal?
It's a good question. So it's going to be different in a number of ways. Number one, they're trying a different legal authority. They used a statute called the HEROES Act of 2003 to enact the first student loan forgiveness plan. But the Supreme Court struck that down, basically saying, Congress didn't say expressly that you had the ability to enact sweeping loan cancellation. So they're instead trying the Higher Education Act, a different statute that does give explicit authority to the Education Department to compromise and waive federal student loan balances, although of course some argue that that's still not specific enough to allow for sweeping cancellation. I think the Biden administration is basically trying to thread the needle here by creating a more targeted type of student loan forgiveness program, whereas the first plan would have been broadly accessible to anyone who earned below a certain income threshold. The new plan looks like it's going to be more targeted, and they're focusing on 5 broad categories of borrowers, including those who are harmed by their school, those who owe more now than what they started with, those who are experiencing some sort of hardship, or who qualify for other student loan forgiveness plans, but for whatever reason have not yet applied.
And as an attorney, as our student loan expert, when you look at this, do you think that this could face any legal hurdles?
I think it absolutely will face legal challenges. I think that it might be on stronger legal footing than the first plan was, but we'll have to see how it plays out in court. But most observers believe that this will face legal challenges. I think, whether it will stick around or not is an open question.
And I know we are a long way from the summer. I could tell you that in New York, it is probably below 30 right now. But there are some new things to look out for in July of 2024 regarding income-driven repayment. Can you just dive a little deeper there?
So this is in regards primarily to the new SAVE plan, which is designed to be the most affordable income-driven plan that's ever been created. The SAVE plan is basically being implemented in phases, which with some of the elements of the plan available now, and the rest will go into effect next July. So next July, we're going to see a tweaked repayment formula, which for undergraduate borrowers may result in a further reduction of their payments by over 50%. In addition, folks who consolidate their loans after this one-time adjustment is over, will no longer lose all of their IDR credit, which is what had happened before. Instead, borrowers will be credited with the weighted average of the underlying loans included in the consolidation. So that's sort of a shift from the way things used to be. And it also is how folks on track for PSLF will be treated as well going forward.
Adam, you just gave us a 7-month plan, good for borrowers, but I always leave our viewers with this from you. What is your biggest piece of advice you have for student loan borrowers?
Look out for your options. Go to studentaid.gov, see who's servicing your loan, see whether you're in a repayment status, check out these new programs, see how you might qualify for or benefit from them. In particular, look at the IDR account adjustment. If you need to consolidate and you haven't done so, we have a little bit more time to do that with this latest extension of the deadline. More information is good, so check to see what you might benefit from and go for it if it looks like it might help you.
Adam Minsky, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.